Ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so here we are, 2024, first episode of Somebody's Son. And I'm excited because I have my mom here. And you can't be somebody's son without somebody's mom. So I felt like this is the perfect opportunity for us to really delve into what it was like for you, being a mom, a single mom. You had 2 boys first, so we'll focus on that. And just generally speaking, what it was like for you to be a mother during that time. So first, tell everybody who you are, outside of just being my mom.
I'm Nina Moore, but hold on, he just birthed something because he said you can't be somebody's son without somebody's mom. Uh-oh.
Right.
I'm just saying, so watch out now. But I am Nina Coleman Moorer, and our family has a very rich heritage, so I'm very proud when I say Coleman. I'm Moorer. I've been remarried now for 10 years, together for 12, almost 13 years now. I'm a former hairstylist, and my children spent many a days in the salon.
For sure.
One of my goals as a mom, I'm a professional network marketer now, but one of my goals as a mom was to be present. I didn't have a lot, even though they didn't know that we didn't have a lot.
Right.
But my biggest goal was to be present because I felt like I didn't really get that from my parents. And so
wait, before you get too far into that, before we get there,
okay.
All right, we got us some questions. We won't probably get to all of them, but we'll go and try to delve into as much as we can. And so, as everybody knows, Somebody's Son is a platform that discusses fatherhood, parenting, mental health. And like I said, I just felt it was really important to bring my mom on because I think raising young Black boys is a very unique experience.
It is.
Being a single mom is a very unique experience. I have 2 children now, so me and Hendrix's mother are not together. Me and Rumi's mom are, and I've been navigating all that myself. Yeah. And so I just wanted to talk with you a little bit about what that journey was like. So the first question I had for you were, what were the biggest challenges you faced as a teenage mom raising young Black boys?
There's so many emotional challenges. I was a baby raising a baby.
Right.
I think we grew up the closest because you taught me how to be a mom because I had no clue. Right. And then I was in a space where everyone was mad at me, so nobody was helping me.
Wow.
Because everybody was mad at what had happened, and I guess the shame that I caused the family and, being in the church and things like that. And so I felt like the things that I really needed in nurturing, I didn't really get. I had to kind of figure it out on my own because everybody was angry. But then once you came, like you're my mom, my mom, that raised me, it did change some. Okay. Because nobody, there was no babysitting clubs for me and stuff like that. Literally, I was told, if you can't take them where you want to go, then you don't go.
Wow.
And so I didn't get any relief, unless I was working or at school. I literally took 3 buses to get you to a babysitter to get to school early in the morning. I had choir at 7:45 in the morning, and I had to take. Even though the ride to the sitters was like a 10-minute ride in the car, on the bus, it was no way to get directly there. So it took me all the way around into Mount Airy and around, and then back down to Broad and Olney to go to school. So the challenges that I faced, I was afraid a lot, but I didn't know how to really voice that. I was afraid. I just knew that I now had this child and these children that depended on me, and I just had to make it happen. And so I spent a lifetime of figuring out how to make it happen.
Right. So that actually goes into my next question. One, I couldn't imagine having to do that. I often talk to my friends or talk to the people about, could you imagine being 16 with a kid? And jokingly, I'm like, who wants to go through that experience? But at the time, I couldn't imagine being, because I was at 16, I'm worried about playing ball. Right. I'm worried about, running around with my homies. I'm not worried about raising no kids. So I could only imagine how that felt. So how did becoming a teenage mother impact your education and schooling? I know you talked about you had to take buses to get me to the babysitter and you had choir 7:45. So what was that impact like? You're 16, you turned 16 that year, or 17.
I turned 16.
16 that year, right.
Right.
And then, so you were a sophomore in high school.
In high school. In the Philadelphia High School for Girls.
Right. So how was that? How did that impact your schooling, your education at all?
It was shameful.
Okay.
So it was shame. I wasn't ashamed of you.
Right.
I was ashamed of the situation. I was one of 3 girls that here's the deal. People dealt with it very, very differently then. So one of the girls, Caucasian girl, she found out she was pregnant at like 6 months and put her baby up for adoption.
Gotcha.
Another young lady named Velvet Kane, who she and I became friends because we were the only 2 girls in Girls High.
Right. With babies.
With babies, pregnant. Anybody else? I mean, who knows?
Who knows, right?
Who knows? But
Sorry,
was but my peers respected me so much because they saw how I was handling myself. I learned how to do nails in school because of you, because I was like, my parents gave me $25 a week. And out of that $25, I had to eat and buy your diapers.
Right.
And so I learned how to do nails. That's when I started, I guess I became a hustler because I learned how to do nails, and I had to do that like during lunch and stuff like that just to make an extra like $10 or an extra $15 so that I could support myself and support you, because that's all I got.
Wow. Yo, the segues are crazy. The next question I had for you was, what kind of support did you feel you needed the most as a young mother, and was it readily available to you?
No, I just feel like I spent a lot of time just figuring it out and just learning as I go.
Right.
And thankfully, like the people in the neighborhood, neighborhoods were different then.
100%.
Right. And
100%.
So our neighbors were, very, if I needed to do something, I was able to pay like Miss Jackson across the street,
right.
became like part of our circle of. It takes a village.
No,
you cannot raise kids by yourself.
No.
You just can't.
No.
And thankfully, we did have a good village of people. Curtis Harris.
Yeah.
His dad used to come and pick him up from school, for school rather. And he got to the point where when he would see me out there struggling, trying to get you, he got his dad to start taking me up to your sitter.
Yeah.
And I didn't even care at that point. If y'all could just take me up there, I'll take the bus back down.
Right.
So a lot of it was figuring it out, but I did then start to, like, people started to really, you were a great kid.
Okay.
You and Julian both were great kids, and so people were fond of you, and you didn't give me any issues. Julian was a little whiny.
Yeah.
He was you were close to me, but Julian had a different kind of, I don't know, he was a little more needy as a kid.
Right.
You were more independent. And so the people, the support system started to grow as you got older. Then Candy came into our lives, and once I moved out on my own and things like that.
Man, I think you talked about it needing a village. I laugh all the time. I'm like, there's no way I could do this all by myself.
Yeah.
There's no way. I mean, when y'all moved to Georgia, that was one of the major things. It was just like, man, having you there, y'all both there, to be able to just kind of like, yo, I just need a second, or I just want to go to the gym and be able to like take the kids where I know they're gonna be safe.
Right.
Is like monumental.
Right.
Monumental. And then now, Nay has been someone that I say all the time is like the sister I never knew I needed, because she's shown up for me in ways to help with Hendrix, now Rue,
right.
Kirk, like there's so many people that I could go down the list of, like Joel, Madge. If I need something, I'm happy to at least have them where they'll come over and help with the kids, because it's a lot. I mean, there's hardly, even now, I'm like, there's very little time for yourself. And even to try to like be able to plot and scheme and think through like, okay, what is my next move? Like that takes time and space, and you want to show up for the kids, but then you also know that you need to do what's necessary in order for you to show up for yourself.
Right.
So I can only imagine, I'm 35 thinking about these things, and I can only imagine what that's like at 16. So in what ways do you feel that you grew or changed the most during the early years?
I had to have an extreme focus because all of that, like wanting to go out, like my life stopped.
Yeah.
And a different kind of life began. While all of my peers were out, what party were they going to for the weekend, and going to the malls and going to the movies together, I was raising children. I was raising you, and then later came Julian. At that point, I was adopted, Madge. But I learned how to do life really early because I had no choice.
Right.
Like I learning to have to think not just for yourself, and that every decision you make now impacts somebody else.
Right.
That is a stressful thing.
It is.
And you don't know whether what you're doing is right or wrong. You're just praying that you're making the right decision. But at that time, how do I even know that that's the right decision? I'm 16, 17, 18, trying to navigate my own emotions as I'm growing, trying to navigate life for another human being. I look back now and I'm like, only God kept me, because I don't even know how. As I look back, and you guys are good kids. Like I'm blessed that in spite of what we didn't have,
right.
Thankfully, my father was there. Thankfully, my mom was there. My brother stepped in a lot.
Yeah, I'm about to say, Big Sheet.
to be present emotionally, mentally, for you in ways that I didn't know how to be a man, or a boy, or to even teach you like what was the right way to go to the bathroom or hygiene things. And I mean, I knew the general scheme of things, but I believe that I became a better person because I had to learn stuff that people don't learn until they're in their 30s.
No, for sure.
At a young age.
And then just going back to the village again, shout out to Big Sheet, Pop, Mama, Meek. I often tell people all the time, a very unsung hero in those developmental years was BJ.
Yes.
I don't think he understands, I've told him.
Right.
I've always, on his birthday, I always try to just let him know, like, yo, you were so integral as a part of my life, because I needed that older person, but not too far outside of, he was perfect, in the perfect balance,
right.
And he was able to talk to me in a way and get through to me in a way that I don't think anyone else was at that time, and I'm really grateful for him, and James too.
What's so crazy about BJ is he needed me, but I think looking at life now, I didn't realize how much we needed him too.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So it was a reciprocal thing, because he needed me. He had no, he lost both his parents.
Yeah, shout out to BJ.
Shout out to BJ.
We love you, man, for real.
Yeah.
For real. So you talked a lot about emotional challenges and things that you experienced during that time. Can you describe some of the emotional challenges you faced and how you cope with them?
I don't think I coped. I think I existed. I don't think I knew how to cope. No one had those kind of conversations back then. And now I look back and I know that that's where my obesity came from, because I was carrying all of that trauma, and there was no one to talk to about it, because it was almost as if, well, I mean, you did it, so there was never any conversations to help me really manage or, through the why did I end up in that place.
Right.
So no, I didn't cope. I just existed, and I think you just start to become numb to it all.
I meant to ask you this at the beginning, because I was curious. What was your initial reaction when you found out you were pregnant? Like,
I didn't believe it. I just didn't believe it. I was like, there's no way. But I was sick as a dog with you, like sick.
Wow.
Every day, from day one, and I was angry. Like I didn't want to be with him.
Yeah.
But I was angry that I was left alone in that whole process.
Right.
Everyone in my home life was angry. You know what I mean? But no one ever stopped to ask me how I felt.
Sheesh.
Not one time, because everybody was so busy being mad at me.
Right.
Or embarrassed by it, or whatever the case may be, or hurt by it. And everyone else was nurturing their hurt, but no one was nurturing mine. Because no one stopped to ask me, how did I feel at 15, get ready to be pregnant, get ready to have a baby? Which
is mind-blowing to me, that I think, I don't know why, especially like in the Black community, it's like, just avoid it and it'll go away. Instead of like actually diving into like, okay, this might be uncomfortable to talk about, but that's the only way you actually arrive at a place to have real dialogue and build real relationship, is having some uncomfortable conversations. And I'm grateful that like over the years, we've been able to kind of talk through some of those experiences, but I don't know why people ran away from it like it was never going to come up. And all it does is haunt everyone. Like, because it's something that's like, we know we need to talk about it, but until we take the time to do it, it just doesn't happen. And it's mind blowing to me. And, you know, going through some of those experiences with you, how did it feel like not having my biological father play any role in assisting you during that time and even after?
I was hurt and angry by that. Yeah. And I felt like abandoned in the whole situation. And he was so foul. Like, I remember having to take you to the doctors once. And again, the doctors were in Chestnut Hill.
Right. That's
so,
crazy. If y'all from Philly, y'all understand it's a pretty good distance.
That's a hike, right. So from West Oak Lane. Yeah. I had to come down to Broad Nolly on public transportation with a pocketbook, a book bag, a diaper bag, you know, the weather, heavy coats, all of that. And I remember being at Broad Nolly, and I'm on the corner waiting for the 18 bus to take me up to Chestnut Hill. And it was the extended 18 bus because the 18 stopped at a certain point, but to go into Chestnut Hill was that longer. You had to get on a certain bus. And he walked by. He walked by while I'm standing there on the corner with you and all that stuff and just acted like I wasn't even there. It was moments like that like just I was furious inside. And like, I didn't do this by myself. Right. And he knew I didn't do it by like he knew, but he knew like all of that acting like, cause he got arrested for paternity and stuff like that, and I took you down. You didn't know why we were there, but you and I went downtown. How embarrassing that is, right? Because I tried to get child support from him, but he dodged it, and then he ended up getting arrested, and we go down. He didn't show up. So how do you deny paternity and then don't show up? Yeah, that's crazy. You know, and so I felt like it was always like this plague on me, you know, because I've seen other situations where the fathers were present. So why me? Like, God, why me? Why I'm in this situation now, why do I have to deal with this by myself? And I was very close to his family. So that was strange to me too, that nobody stepped up. Yeah, I mean, it's wild to me to even like, as we've talked and discussed more, like hearing more of the story, hearing the ways that people in our family didn't show up, knowing that people in his family didn't show up. I think it also has not forced me, but it's allowed me to show up and be the type of dad I want to be to my kids as a result of just like not having him around. And again, I'm grateful for the people that have stepped up, but I don't think nothing still ever fills that void completely of not having your pop. Like, you know, you have people that step up and show up and you appreciate those things, but there's nothing like it. I mean, that's why I try not to go above and beyond. And I know sometimes I'm overcompensating for the ways that I do things because I'm like, well, I didn't have it, so I try to do the most sometimes. But it's all coming from a good place, you know? But I was like, I know even for myself that those are things that I've had to navigate on my own. Like, okay, it's okay to say no. Them hearing no is not a bad thing. You know, like they got to process and deal with it themselves and they'll be okay. But I think that not having it, you try to like be Superman sometimes and you stretch yourself too thin. And so thinking about that, I mean, there's a lot of negative things that come up with this when this is discussed because, you know, it was a trying time. It was painful. It was isolating, I can imagine. What are some moments that were triumphant or moments that you were like, you know, I did it as a parent or watching your kids? Like, what are some of those? What moment comes to mind first for you? Your first steps, all of you. Your first words, graduations, watching you score or not score. Right. Just physically being present. Because my mom, growing up, my birth mother, she was asleep when I was walking myself to school and things like that. She was really not present for the things that I was doing growing up. I kind of felt like I was raising myself all the time. So being at your school plays.
Plays.
Right, being at the games for you.
Which, if y'all don't know, if y'all went to high school in Philly during the time I was in high school, everybody knew my mom. I mean, she was a one-man cheering section. The loudest person in the gym, no matter what gym we went into. And it didn't matter if we were in South Philly, we were in Grants in North Philly, we were anywhere. My mom was there cheering the whole team on by herself.
Yeah.
By herself. So I definitely, that is something I will never, ever, ever forget. And people still stop you now.
Damn.
If you're in Philly, like, yo, I remember you from being at the game.
Mom, right?
Yeah, it was a wild time in the city. And we were good. It was dope.
That was important. Like, that was so important to me. It was so crazy, that my clients knew on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Rashiid has a game. You can book an appointment, but you can't book during these times. And they would wait. They would go to the salon, get their hair shampooed, molded, or whatever the case may be, so that when I came back, I would go right to curling, because there was nothing that was going to keep me from being 100% present for you guys. And not just, and as the team started to grow, not just for you,
for everybody.
but for everybody, because I looked around and there were maybe 3 parents there at every game.
Yeah.
So it was important to me that every one of those kids on that team felt important, which is why I developed a nickname for everybody. So when they scored or whatever they did, I was cheering not just for you, but for the whole team, because I knew what it was like to be on stage and not have a person that I knew looking at me.
That was monumental. I mean, you were the team mom just by default, for sure. And that has always trickled in, always lent itself to all of my homies or teammates coming to the crib. Yep. Or the majority of them, they lived uptown like we did, were always at the house. So it was dope. It was like, they also became family. I mean, they still family to this day. Right. So that's dope. How do you think your experience as a teen mom shaped the men your sons have become? You
guys are resilient in a way that I don't even think you realize. And Paul and I were just talking about this yesterday, and we always talk about it. He always says that you mainly remind him of me, how you just gonna make it happen.
Right.
Julian the same. Like, Julian, he doesn't communicate a lot of what he goes through. He just chooses to go through it alone. I wish that he wouldn't, but that's his choice, and it's his space. He likes to work it out and then talk about it.
Right.
And Majesty is just a different kid, all in itself. She also will kind of wait until it's needed. You guys just have 3 different personalities, but I believe that you both are exemplary men. You have integrity and character. You're well respected. And I don't really think either of you realize how much of an impact you have on everyone that's connected to you. Like, you guys are the real deal. Holyfield, I'm proud to be your mom. I am proud watching what you've become and what you are going to become. Yeah. There isn't really much that I would do differently. I yelled a lot when you guys were younger. Yeah. And not because of y'all. Yeah. It really was my own internal. Like, I didn't know how to by the time y'all would go to ask me a question, sometimes I would blow up just because I didn't know how else to handle where I was at. And I wasn't even angry with you guys. It was just, I watched it. So some of it was learned behavior. Yeah. Thankfully, before you guys got too old, I learned that was just not cool. Yeah. And I started dealing with a lot of my own internal trauma, which is why I was the way that I was. I wasn't the best, but I know that I was there. You know?
For sure. Yeah. And I think it's something to be said too. Like, I've been able to process it in a way where I knew it wasn't about me. So, like, even sometimes where stuff will happen, I'll be like, this don't have nothing to do with me. Right. But I know I'm the closest person in proximity. And sometimes when we don't know how to manage our emotions and we're going through some things, we tend to just lash out whoever is the closest. Right. And I knew that a lot of times it wasn't about me. But I also I ain't gonna hold you, for at that time I knew that I was probably the only one that could deal with it too.
Right.
So I was cool with being able to take the brunt of it, even though at times it'd be like, all right, this is a lot. I was cool with it because I was like, I would rather deal with it than anybody else. So I was like, all right, I knew it, but I 100% knew it wasn't about me. And it took until I was a lot older to even be able to like articulate it. But it was like, even now I would tell them like, it really didn't have nothing to do with y'all. Like, and I think that my siblings in general are still working through some of the things that they need to, but it was a lot for everybody involved, and I don't think they had the tools at the time, none of us did, to really be able to look back and take a step back, because we were all so worried about how it was impacting us immediately. Like, no one was able to look at it and be like, okay, how did this make me feel? Like, now as a parent, when I even have those moments, I've gone back and had to apologize to the kids, even at 7 and almost 3.
Right.
It's like, yo, you know what? And I've told Hendrix mad times, like, that actually didn't have nothing to do with you. I had a bunch of stuff going on. I'm sorry, my bad. And so it took for me to experience it, on the other hand, to then be able to be a parent now and be like, you know what? That was my fault. I owe you one. You know what I mean? And I hope you forgive me. Not that you have to, but I hope that you would at least hold space for me, knowing that this is a moment that I've had. You know what I mean? And so it took for me to go through that, though, to be able to look at it now and say, you know what? This ain't have anything to do with anybody.
Right.
Like, it was my own stuff, but that came from experiencing it as a child.
Well, financial pressure will do that to you.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that I've had another opportunity to be a different version of a mom. Now with Paige, she doesn't have to experience that person. But when you just don't know, like when you're trying to figure out, okay, now how am I going to pay this?
Yeah.
And how I'm going to take care of that? And how am I going to, hopefully they don't come get my car. And you're hiding that because you don't want your kids to have to experience that, because you're literally doing it all on your own. Right. Even when I was married the first time, I still felt very alone. I felt more alone in that marriage than I did single.
Wow, that's crazy.
And so, because emotionally, sometimes people don't know how to be emotionally present when they've never been taught how to be emotionally present.
No, for sure.
But you, being the kind of kid that you were, you and Julian both just asked so many questions. It made me have to talk.
Yeah.
Because you wanted to know, why? I couldn't just tell you.
Why kid?
Right.
I was
why? Well, why? And then Julian became, why? Majesty wasn't that way.
Yeah.
But I had gone through it enough with the two of you, especially you, that I learned that I have to communicate with these kids in a way that we didn't get communicated to.
Exactly. I think Hendrix is a why child to the fullest. And even rude, but it's cool because I understand that they're just trying to make sense of the world that they're living in.
Right.
And that really was all it was. At the time, I didn't know, like, I genuinely, and I know a lot of times, I remember both of y'all have said it many times, like, it almost came off as like I was trying to be smart, or like I was talking back, but it was really genuinely like I was actually just trying to understand, how did we arrive at this decision at this moment in time? Like, what does it mean for the larger framework? And so the both of them, I mean, there are times where it drives me up a wall.
Right.
But I'm like, I try to take the time to explain it because I know that they're just trying to make sense of the world. And I think that because of that, when I do say something and I'm like, listen, I don't have time to explain it right now, it's like, okay, because they understand that
you would.
9 times out of 10, I'm going to sit down and tell you exactly what it's about, or try to explain it to you in a way that makes sense for you, because they don't need to know everything.
Right.
But I think there is something to be said about, okay, well, look, we're not doing this right now. And then be able to explain, like, here are the reasons why we're not doing it right now. It's not because I don't want to do it for you, but we have other things that are higher on the priority list at this point in time. So it was something that, like, I knew it would come back to bite me in the behind at some point, but it really is genuinely because I understand now that they're just trying to see the world for what it is and make sense out of it at the age they are, at 7 and 3. They don't have all the ability to come to, or deductive reasoning to be like, you know what, this is why they're doing it. It's like they're still trying to make sense of it. So on the back end, it's kind of, it's easier to see it.
I'm grateful for a lot of the things, because I don't want my parents to feel like I had the worst,
Yeah,
because there's a lot of things that because of how tough they were, I am the person that I am today.
Yeah.
However, when we were growing up, we weren't able to ask certain questions because it was taken as we were being disrespectful.
Right.
We weren't able to have those kinds of conversations because stay in a child's place. Do as I say, not as I do.
I've heard that so many times.
And the thing is, they only repeated what they knew.
Exactly.
They only repeated what they knew. So I don't hold them accountable for a lot of that because they just didn't know, right? They didn't know any better.
Yeah.
But having you especially, and then Julian, because the two of you were a lot alike in that way, like you just wanted to know, why? It really helped me to understand it. I even understand it even the more now. Like when Paige is asking questions, she's really not trying to be disrespectful. She really just wants to know, and it's okay to want to know. And I would rather you find out from me than to try to figure it out in the world like we had.
Especially now with the ease of the way that information flows now, it's so easy for them to just go find something and then make a snap judgment on what something means because they're seeing it so quickly without a way to actually digest it in a way that makes sense for them. So. No, it's a learning curve, and I think that I'm grateful for the experience. I think it helped when I was in the classroom. I think that being in the classroom and working with kids for as long as I did before I transitioned, it helped me become a better parent too because I could understand where their questions and things were coming from. Right. Who were your role models or sources of information as a young mom?
Oof. Mainly my parents, my cousin Miko, shout out to her for being there for everybody. My Aunt Diane was very intricate in my life until, she was no longer with us. Those would probably be the closest people to me.
How did becoming a mom at a young age like you did influence your career or career goals and aspirations?
So I thought I was going to sing and be an entertainer and go out in the world, but it's so crazy the language that people use once you have a kid, like, everything you wanted to do, you can forget all that now. You a mom, you a mom. And so you kind of just suppress what you think you're going to be. I went to beauty school. I just knew that college was not for me. Yeah. And I also knew that I needed to do something that I could start making money right away. And I didn't want to just go work in a store or something like that because I was really good in retail stores. I didn't realize that I really just had a knack and a gift for fashion and selling even at a young age. Like it just was something that was very, very natural. And so being in the salon taught me a lot about customer service and customer relations and how to talk to people and how to really listen. And sales, now that I'm in sales, honestly, I think some people just have the gift. Yeah. And I know now looking back that I really just have the gift. I think being a young mom, you're just trying to figure out, okay, what can I do like right now to make some money and to provide the lifestyle that you guys had become accustomed to, because my parents, they weren't rich, but they provided a very good lifestyle for us. For sure. So that's what it kind of boiled down to.
All right, if you could go back and tell your younger self something, what would it be?
That you're perfect just the way you are.
I love that.
And that everything you need is already inside of you. You don't have to look externally for any kind of validation.
Love that. What are the most important lessons or values you wanted to pass on to your kids?
To be present. And to have no judgment, for us to love each other unconditionally. Even no matter what we've done, right? No matter what we do, because we're just not going to be perfect. But that no judgment zone, we are who we are. We'll love each other as for what we are. We pull it on the table. But we should be able to communicate the good and the bad, the ugly, and still love each other, but then to be fully present for each other.
All right, last question. Looking back, how do you think being a young mother has shaped your life in the long term?
I could not imagine having all of you guys later in life.
Wow.
Because my energy level, like at 51, almost 52, having to walk around 8, 9, 10 miles in an amusement park, like it do something to your body. Yeah. Thankfully, I am in a much better physical place than I was then.
Yeah.
But I just believe having you guys young, we grew up together. Like, I don't know, there was like there was an energy that I had to be able to handle that part of your lives, is because it was it was very active. Like I could not imagine being 60 trying to do those things.
Listen, I tell my homies all the time, like, look, I'm not saying have kids now, and sure, it might look different when you're older with more money, you might have more nannies, but I enjoy being in it with the kids. And I'm like, I don't know if I could, if I'm gonna have another kid, it needs to be within the next like 2-3 years. Cause
right, to do this.
To do it all over, start over, like there is a level of energy that you need. But just all in all, thank you for the ways that you showed up for all of us. Thank you for being our mom. And thank you for doing this and putting yourself out there. Maybe we might need to do a part 2 because I have so many more questions. Yeah. But in full transparency, these cameras gonna die because I forgot to charge them. So we just gonna make it do what it do. And Mom, I love you.
We'll be back.
Thank you so much. We'll do a part 2 at a later date. Peace, y'all.